It's Infrastructure Week in Rhode Island.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Welcome in. Infrastructure Week means what to you? I'm not sure you know how to react to that, although I do have a note on school infrastructure here today. The Providence Journal put some really ugly pictures in their newspaper this weekend that ought to remind us how embarrassed we ought to be about what investment we have not made in our schools. But there's all sorts of other infrastructure that is a constant conversation, and how we fund it, how we get after it, I think is an interesting angle to our contemporary conversations, and the CEO of the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank is here this evening to talk to us about that. Pleasure to have you aboard. Welcome in on this Monday evening. All bets are off. Headlines: the U.S. Supreme Court, just before press time, we record this program each afternoon, reacted to that. Seems to be somewhat serendipitous. The Providence Journal put this headline in just before we put this headline in for the show, just before we started. Big push to open sports betting here in Rhode Island, and there's an interesting conversation that goes along there to try to determine whether or not we've actually authorized sports betting here. I think legal minds on both sides could actually argue either side of the case. So I'm not going to stand in my head and say we haven't done the right thing yet, but I think it's worth examining. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court just now, today, decided that New Jersey wins. New Jersey brought the lawsuit that said, hey, look, you can't prohibit us. This is a federal prohibition on a state right. Nevada being the only place where you could have sports gambling on a legal basis. And now there are 5 states reportedly that are poised with legislation not only already passed, but sports books already built, ready to go in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We are in a funky place here in Rhode Island because I believe the Raimondo administration and even the legislative leadership thinks that we have already passed enough of a law to allow for us to just make this transition to sports betting. We'll dig into that over the next few days here and on the radio on WPRO weekdays 3 till 6, because I like to hear the arguments on both sides. It better be that way for the Raimondo administration. They already booked in $23 million worth of budgetable money in our current state budget plan for receipts from sports gambling. That's called a flyer, and I'm not sure when this plane actually lifts off or lands. We shall see. Minimally, with the way this joint runs, it's going to have to be 3 or 4 months to get our acts together on that whole thing. So it's going to be interesting. And let alone the whole conversation about whether it's good versus, I guess that horse left the gate a while ago, right? I guess it's ironic to use horse as a metaphor, right? But since we love gambling on horses. Interestingly enough, though, can I just mention this? New Jersey, in their current legislation, prohibits gambling on their local schools. So you can't bet Rutgers. If Rutgers is playing Seton Hall, can't bet them. The state schools. Now, why is that? I think that should give you pause. Just think about it. Something's wrong if you can't bet the local schools. There's something possibly corrupt about this whole thing. And the NFL has already petitioned Congress today to say, hey, can you write a federal law on this whole thing? All right, let's move along. This front page in the Providence Journal is really interesting. Every time we're reminded that it's not just the Providence City schools that are crumbling, I think that's a good thing. The Barrington Middle School is about to be rebuilt to the tune of, I don't know, $40, $50, $60 million. It is amazing how many schools out there are in desperate need of being rebuilt, and we don't have the money. And Governor Raimondo has been playing around with this $1 billion idea to build new schools. We already have $500 million baked in the budget already, and it's not near enough For the new money that's been allocated, the city of East Providence is on the line, so to speak, for its high school and other schools, and will gobble up most of the new money. The proposal for the balance of the $500 million of new money is not for another few years. And meanwhile, we're sitting here picking our noses trying to figure out how we're going to teach our kids when the ceilings are falling down. We got a big problem in the state. And by the way, it ain't brand new. When I moved in here in 1999 and rode my wife around the state, her first reaction was, what a dump these schools are. That's almost 20 years ago now. It's on us. It's on us. Pedroia, Pedro, I just went back about 10 years, 15 years? I'm still upset about him hitting our coach. Anyway, that would be the Yankees. Pedroia is tuning up in Pawtucket. I think the legislature ought to take the bill up right now. They ought to take the bill up right now. The House ought to move the bill right now. If there's actually an interest in passing the stadium financing, you know, get it when we got a big-time guy playing around at the ballpark. Because as I've been learning lately, the incremental progress that Worcester is making on this project is significant. So while Speaker Mattiello is afraid of his own shadow in District 15, which won't care a rat's patooey about this come Election Day or beyond, and I promise you if they move to Worcester 6 months from then, the electorate will be saying things like, I can't believe you let the Paw Sox go. That is very, very close right now. And for some reason, the Speaker just can't seem to put a proposal together that he thinks he can sell to his friends in the legislature. So we'll see. I don't know how much rehab Pedroia is going to be doing in Pawtucket, but you know, you could hurry. All right, here's the headline. Infrastructure Week kicks off. And don't worry, I don't know what it means either. Jeff Diehl is the CEO of the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, but I'm starting to understand what your fine organization does. Welcome to the broadcast.
Good. Thank you very much.
Nice to have you.
Great to be here.
What does the Infrastructure Bank do?
Well, we invest money in by making loans to local municipalities and some of the quasi-state agencies in 4 sectors. We support drinking water and clean water, which for most people like myself is wastewater and sewage. We do clean energy projects for both public sector buildings and at the local municipal level and for small businesses. We're working on a residential program. We lend money to repair roads and bridges, and we've got a new brownfield remediation fund that we're set up.
Right, so we'll dig into some of the specifics of that work in our next segment. What is this Infrastructure Week concept?
Well, it's a celebration of infrastructure and the need for improved and repaired infrastructure. It was really set up by a nonprofit called infrastructureweek.org, and it was funded and supported by institutions like the AFL-CIO, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, National Association of Manufacturers, and the Brookings Institute, to name a few, and a number of others. And we've joined as one of 300 affiliate members, and we're holding a series of events around the state to have a dialogue around infrastructure, understand what infrastructure is needed and what some of the barriers are. But we're also celebrating some of the projects that we've been involved in, both large projects like revamping and upgrading of the Warren wastewater treatment facility, harden it against climate change, and increase the capacity, but also some individual projects. We lend money to homeowners to remediate cesspools and septic systems. And so we make little loans to homeowners as well.
Do most people know that?
Not enough people know about it. And that's one of the things that when I came into this job a couple years ago, we really turned the organization from a program-centric institution to customer-centric. And so we've been out meeting with local cities and towns. We've created marketing campaigns around our programs. Thank you very much for having me on today, because this is part about how we get the word out of what we're trying to do.
All right, we'll get into some of the things that they're doing specifically when we come backstage. So we have a link at foxprovidence.com for you after the program on Infrastructure Week to that particular website from the Infrastructure Bank. If we could put up a full screen here on some of the initiatives that the Infrastructure Bank in Rhode Island is doing. Fund improvements to local roads and bridges, preserve and clean water supply, support Rhode Island businesses, help lower energy costs. There's also some consumer stuff, as Jeff Diehl mentioned, that we should talk about. Explain again for me what the role of the infrastructure bank is in the in the diagram of state government. The infrastructure bank is a quasi-government agency, correct? And when we say quasi, it's a private organization mostly funded by public dollars.
Yeah, I mean, the governor appoints our board, and the general treasurer is also on our board. We get limited amounts of capital, mostly in their water programs, from the federal government. The state has to match 20%. And then we borrow $4 in the private bond markets for every dollar of federal funds we get. So we leverage what we get in capital.
You're regulated at that ratio, 4 to 1? Is that?
No, that's really more a function of we issue bonds as a AAA, which is the highest credit rating out there, because of the level of capital that we have and the coverage that we have on our bonds.
How much principal dough do you have sitting in the infrastructure bank?
Well, we have a balance sheet that is about $1.6, $1.7 billion, and that's mostly loans in our clean water and drinking water.
That's a huge amount of money. That's not in. See, I always get confused by this, and we've had some fun discussions about what this organization ought to be titled. It's not a traditional bank. People don't make deposits, but they can borrow money from the organization.
Municipalities can. I mean, as somebody told me earlier, maybe we should have called it the paving and loan.
The what?
The paving and loan. So we do roads and bridges.
Savings and loan. That's a Jersey guy here in Minnesota.
But again, what we're doing is we're investing we're providing finance to local cities and towns to invest in their infrastructure.
So where does the consumer part of that come in?
Well, we have a couple of programs that help remediate cesspools and septic systems.
Is that direct funding to the homeowner?
We provide loans to the homeowners, yes. We work with Rhode Island Housing, who administers that.
Okay, well, that's what
program.
I was asking. Yeah. It's just so while someone isn't going to be putting cash in or taking cash out of the infrastructure bank in Rhode Island, both communities and individuals can access funding from it.
Yeah, the homeowners need to be in a community that participates in our program.
Gotcha. So you have to work through your community, through the municipality.
Yes, and the municipality sets the criteria under which the loans are made. And we work with Rhode Island Housing, who administers it. That's what they do. And we do small loans, and so they do the credit work and the servicing, and we provide the capital to that.
Having $1.6 or $7 billion out there is no small potatoes. It's a significant amount of money. I mean, think about it. The state budget on an annual basis is about $9 billion. So that's.
Yeah. I mean, we've never had a default on any of our loans, nor have we had any delinquencies.
Well, when you lend to towns, it's a pretty safe bet that they're going to sometime, pay down. I guess if a community went belly up, that would put some financing in trouble. Correct?
Well, we have a direct line from our loans to the investors. So the bond investors are effectively investing through us into those loans. So if there is a default, we have mechanisms on how some of the loans will change in their parameters, but the bondholders are really on the hook. But we also have capital in there that provides them with some safety as well.
Who's setting the priorities here?
Well, we work with specific departments within the government. So, for example, on our clean water, we work with the Department of Environmental Management. And for a project to be eligible for our financing, they make an application to DEM. And DEM has a transparent scoring system that then puts it on a project priority list. So they grade every project. So it doesn't matter where the project is or who's sponsoring it. If you rank higher on that project priority list and make an application to us, if we have a limited amount of capital that year, we lend to the #1 priority, then the 2, 3, 4. And if you're lower down the list and we don't have enough money to go around, then you don't get financed that year.
Who are you shopping your capability to? I mean, I get where you've already explained where the relationships are, but what's your inertia?
Well, what we've
what's
been
the
doing,
catalyst
yeah,
to your
what
stuff?
we've been doing is we've been going out and meeting with the local cities and towns, and 39 cities and towns across the state, and trying to get a better understanding is what are their infrastructure investment needs? What are they near term? What are they medium term? And what are they long term?
From an intersection in the middle of town that needs to be redone, to the sewer ain't working very well.
That's right.
To what?
Well, we look at energy as well. I mean, we have a new program called the Efficient Building Fund, and that lends money to cities and towns to do energy efficiency and renewable projects, put solar panels on the roof of a building, or put in a new HVAC system in a school or in a repair garage facility. And those projects actually pay for themselves. The amount of money that they save in maintenance and energy pays for the loan itself. And so a lot of what we're doing is trying to understand what infrastructure needs are in the local town so that we can help bring our different programs together.
Do you spend any time talking about this dilapidated school building matter that we've got out there?
Absolutely.
I mean, I made a comment at the top of the show. We need a new idea.
Yeah. I mean, our area within schools is around the energy and HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, because that not only can save money from an energy perspective, but it also provides a much better ambient temperature for learning. The new fans.
Why are you focused on HVAC specifically? Because that's part of the...
Because that's part of where our program and our capital can go.
And by guideline?
Yes. So we can do energy-related things. If you're going to put solar on a roof, we can we can finance the roof repair to make sure it supports it. We also can do water conservation, also green infrastructure, stormwater management in the parking lot. That helps if you're going to put in a new parking lot. It makes sense from an environmental point of view to manage some of that runoff. It reduces the cost at the local wastewater treatment facility and reduces pollution in the river. And we can provide below market finance for those projects.
All right, we'll talk about what the local orientation is to the infrastructure bank. How smart are our local officials in tapping into this resource? We'll be right back. So there's a thing happening in Providence. What happened by the time you see the show at 7:30 at midnight already happened today. How does this story tie in?
Well, we've been, I grew up outside of Detroit. And so, I've watched the situation in Flint unfold with a lot of personal interest because I grew up not too far from there. And one of the things that we've looked at is the risks of lead pipes in drinking water here in the state. And we had a summer intern that we hired last year, and we put her to, one of the few interns that we hired, and we put her to work to make a study of lead pipe issues here in the state. And certainly she did a lot of meetings with Providence Water, and there's an issue of not, lead pipes from the curb to the home. That's owned by the homeowner. But we now have the ability out of our EPA-based water programs to finance that remediation. And so we worked with Providence Water to fund a loan program that they've set up. So we're going to provide $1 million interest-free for them to make loans to their customers. It's to help defer the cost of replacing those lead pipes from the curb from the Providence Water system.
What are the terms of those loans?
Interest-free for 3 years.
Wow.
So, it's a
cap
pilot
on
program.
the amount of money you can borrow?
It's really, typically the cost is around $3,000 to $6,000 to do this. It depends on the difficulty of the project, but each loan will accommodate that amount.
Finance a lot of plumbing work out there. That's a good thing.
So we're really excited about the program, and if it takes off like we think we will, we'll have more money to put behind it.
Does its possible sale involve you guys at all? I mean, is that the politics of selling the water supply?
Yeah, Providence Water is one of our better customers. We've worked with them as a partner to finance a lot of the improvements in their system. So we're watching that with interest. But again, our loans are secured by the revenues that they have charging their customers. So we're watching it with interest. But again,
so some
we'll
entity
continue.
will be facilitating.
Ultimately,
the customer working.
ultimately, as long as people are buying water from them, we'll get paid.
So this notion that updating sewer and water and all that kind of a thing is Are you trying to market ideas you're trying to create thinking amongst municipal and state leadership on these matters? Are most of the municipal administrations well aware now of what opportunities exist at the State Infrastructure Bank?
We're still getting there. I think we've come a long way in the last couple of years that we've started to be more proactive in marketing it. We're also trying to figure out, we look at infrastructure really as a basic economic development tool, not as a basic service. And we really think that that's an important way to look at it. And we're looking, how can we combine our programs? How can we combine our programs with others? So we work with Commerce on their renewable energy grants. So we're making loans to, facilitating loans to small businesses so that they can do solar or energy efficiency projects and take advantage of incentives that are out there and save more money and make themselves more competitive. The other thing as well is in the Efficient Building Fund, again, where we're lending to municipalities for energy efficiency and renewable energy, we've hired a consulting engineer at our expense because we recognize that in a lot of these spaces there isn't the technical expertise. Mm-hmm. So we've hired this engineer and we offer them free of charge to municipalities and some of the quasi-state agencies.
Just to go in and sit and take a look at what the town's status
exactly.
is.
And so you have a agenda-free consultant that's sitting on your side of the table. It's not trying to sell you something. And they help the municipalities look at their stock of buildings and facilities, recreation facilities, others. Where should they prioritize energy investments? They work with the engineering firms and National Grid.
You've got that to offer. It seems to me at 39 communities out there. I don't know how many governing bodies that really means, but it seems to me that if that's available, everyone ought to just get online and just have the guy stop by, right? Well, seriously, just take a look and say, hey, give us an update.
We've been successful in getting most communities to take advantage of that program, and we'll continue to do that.
Are you feeling like, again, across the board, the municipal level of government is, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being, most aware, how aware across the board are local communities about what the opportunities are with you?
I think we're certainly, we're not where we want to be, but we're higher than, we're probably in the 7 or 8 range.
Why are you not where you want to be? What does that mean?
Well, a lot of it is just because we've just really started this initiative in the last couple of years of getting out and marketing our programs. A good example is we met with a water company who we do a lot of drinking water loans with. They have a couple of dams that they need to deal with. They did not think that our clean water program would be available to them. This clean water program can help them with dams. They've always just borrowed from the drinking water program. And so now we're having a dialogue of, okay, we've got cheap finance for you to help remediate some of these dams. And they'd lowered the priority of those dams because they didn't know how they were going to finance it.
Gotcha.
They just didn't think that we had other programs that might be available to them,
right,
even though they're a very good customer.
So as an everyday person watching, like you and me, just let your local officials know that they ought to be talking to the Infrastructure Bank if they're not doing so already. In this Infrastructure Week, appreciate the visit. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, the final word and we come back. Stay with us. Tomorrow, we will have an interesting debate between the insurance industry and the auto body industry here in Rhode Island over aftermarket parts. The new bill is to stretch from 30 months to 48 months the restrictions on insurance companies mandating that you use aftermarket parts. There's a whole big to-do going on between both entities, and I'm looking forward to the voices on the show tomorrow night. In the meantime, we'll check you out at 3 o'clock on WPRO, I hope. Thanks for watching. Bye.